What is up? You are listening to Today in Gaming Yesterday. I'm your host, Emma Pearl. Today, we are talking all about the year 2000, the month September 2000. Highlights of today's episode include the iMode cell phones and their internet functionality with the PS1 in Japan, Mario Tennis online tournaments in the year 2000, and a deep dive into a highly requested topic, the origin and legacy of the game Backyard Baseball. Stay tuned.
Let me take you back again. Oh, that.
Hey, how's it going? You're listening to Today in Gaming Yesterday. My name is Emma Pearl. I am your host. You can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/Emma Pearl here. You can find me streaming 4 times a week on Twitch, twitch.tv/Emma Pearl. And I'm so excited to bring you this episode of Today in Gaming Yesterday, all about September 2000. First of all, I want to say thank you for your patience during my completely unplanned hiatus of the podcast. I got back from my vacation. I released my vacation recorded episode, and then work, my full-time job, just really took off. I have a lot of life stuff happening, but it's all good. I'm excited to be back. I really miss digging into this kind of stuff and researching and going into these rabbit holes of information. So I'm so excited to be back, and I'm so excited to have you listening today. As mentioned, Emma Pearl is my name. You can follow me on all the places I mentioned, and you can also follow the podcast, twitter.com/TIGYpod. Please rate, review, subscribe, all of the things that you do to the podcasts you love. If you love this podcast, do it to this one. You can also subscribe on YouTube. It is free. It costs $0 to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, and it really helps out a lot. Today's episode, as I mentioned, is about September 2000. Our roadmap for the day, we're going to talk about the September 2000 bestsellers across platforms and the hot rentals. The hot rentals have returned to us. We'll be digging into the September 2000 issue of GamePro, as well as the September 2000 issue of Nintendo Power magazine. And then our deep dive this week, as I mentioned, very highly requested on Twitter, something that I knew very little about, but I'm so excited to have researched and learned more about and to dig into with you, and that is Backyard Baseball, a really cool game. I'm excited to tell you everything I learned about it. Let's start by punching the microphone, and also let's start with some thank yous for places I got a ton of this information for the episode from. RetroCDN.net, as always, for the incredible GamePro magazine scans. RetroMags.com for the Nintendo Power scans. The user @Foon on Twitter for a lot of their help and information, and a really informative Twitter thread that I reference in this episode. TheRinger.com, WBUR.org, Fangraphs.com, and of course, time and time again, we must send our sincere thank yous to Wikipedia.org. Let's kick it off with the bestsellers. So as mentioned in previous episodes, we have the incredible ability to time travel a bit. If we go to the January 2001 issue of GamePro magazine, we can find out the bestsellers from September 2000, and that is what we have done. So the top 10 best-selling games of September 2000, going from 10 to 1. Here it is for you. Number 10, Spec Ops. If I'm wrong, do tell me. TIGYpod@gmail.com. That one is on PlayStation, coming in at number 10. Coming in at number 9, we have Star Wars Episode 1 Racer on the N64. Number 8, it is September, and we still have the jam-packed Summer 2K demo disc on PlayStation in the top 10 best-selling games. Incredible stuff. Coming in at number 7, we have Spiderman on the PlayStation. Number 6, Mario Tennis for the N64. Coming in at number 5 in our top 10 bestsellers list of the month is Gran Turismo 2 on the PlayStation. Number 4, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater on the PlayStation. Number 4, oh gosh, you're going to see why I got confused there. Number 3, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 on the PlayStation. Coming in at number 2, the number 2 best-selling game of September 2000, we have NFL 2K1 on the Dreamcast. Look at the Dreamcast go. And the number 1 best-selling game of September 2000, Madden NFL 2001 on the PlayStation. Let's give it up for Madden and all of the NFL-themed games that were happening at this time. Madden NFL 2001 came out on top, and I love that for them. I think that's great. So I have hot rentals for you across PlayStation, N64, and Dreamcast. Let's start with the PlayStation. Coming in at number 10, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Number 9, Triple Play 2001. Number 8, MLB 2001. Number 7, WWF SmackDown. Number 6, Siphon Filter 2. Number 5, Star Wars Episode 1 Jedi Power Battles. Coming in number 4, Grind Session. Number 3, Disney's Dinosaur. Did anybody see that movie? I don't even think I did. Number 2, X-Men Mutant Academy. And the number 1 hot rental on PlayStation for September 2000, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? That does sound like a fun, rent this game and play with your friends moment. I don't know if I would buy it, but also I don't know why I'm saying that because I do own that game. It's a little sassy. Regis is very sassy in that game. So the top 10 rentals for the N64 of September 2000 coming in. Oh, I only took the 9 from the issue, so we're going to give you the top 9. Wow. Blues Brothers 2000 coming in at number 9. Interesting. Number 8, Super Smash Brothers. Number 7, Daikatana. Number 6, Army Men Air Combat. Number 5, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Number 4, Pokemon Stadium. Number 3, Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards. Coming in number 2, we have Excite Bike 64. I'm good at saying that one now, right? And the number 1 hot rental on the N64 in September 2000 is Perfect Dark. Now let's dig into the Dreamcast hot rentals. Look at the Dreamcast just chugging along. We're all so proud. Coming in number 10, Omicron, I believe. Good stuff. Number 9, Nightmare Creatures 2. Number 8, Gauntlet Legends. Number 7, Grand Theft Auto 2. Number 6, Resident Evil Code Veronica. Number 5 hot rental, Space Channel 5, which I have seen so many ads for, and I desperately want that game. Oh my gosh. Coming in number 4, we have Crazy Taxi. Number 5, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six. Number 2, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. And the number 1 hot rental for the Dreamcast as of September 2000, as per Blockbuster, no bias there, is World Series Baseball 2K1. So it's very, very interesting here that you look at the best selling, obviously Blockbuster's going to beef this list up and be like, we want you to rent these games. But it's interesting to me that people probably aren't going to rent Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 or 2 for PlayStation because everybody owns it. It's interesting that it came in at number 10 on the hot rentals list for PlayStation because I feel like at this period of time, even GamePro mentions it itself. They're like, yo, don't waste your time buying another skateboarding game for PlayStation if you have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. That's the move. And obviously Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 will be the move. One of my absolute favorite video games. But yeah, and also it's interesting too. I don't know if this is an official theory, but I think it's interesting. We talked a bit about the Dreamcast's rental exclusivity via, Family Video. So now it's interesting to have Blockbuster including them now that Dreamcast has exited the exclusivity of being only offered for rental at Family Video or whatever that was. If I'm wrong, roast me in the comments of YouTube. I beg you. So now they're featured in the list. Very interesting. I swear to you, I'm going to do an entire episode on why I think the Dreamcast failed based on my limited knowledge and the things I've picked up from these magazines. But let me tell you, an exclusivity clause with rentals when your console's not doing that great already. What a choice. What a choice. Now let us dig into GamePro for September 2000, a very interesting cover featuring so much diversity of things. So the cover art and image is a really cool, sick little image of Spiderman climbing up or down a building. Who's to say? How do we know? They mentioned that this first review that GamePro has is exclusive. So no other magazine or publication or anything is going to have this very first review that GamePro has of Spider-Man, which I think is rad. And I think, it must be a mildly decent game because it was the 7th best-selling game of this month. Though I think I did play a Spider-Man demo on my stream and it went about as poorly as it could have. I'll have to dig up that clip, see if I can find it. It was not great for me. The cover also mentions that it's one more month till the PlayStation 2. So they're going to show us some of the hottest new PS2 games. I cannot wait. They still have their little fake logo about what they think the PS2 logo should look like. So brave of you, GamePro, to do that. They also mention a Hey You Pikachu review, which is great. And on the cover, they acknowledge my personal confusion with how many football games are out there in the year 2001. NFL Blitz 01, Madden NFL 01, NFL Game Day 01, NCAA Football 01, NCAA Game Breaker 2001. Why? Why do we do this? Lots of good advertisements for things like Mario Tennis. This Mario Tennis advertisement is great. Nintendo's advertising in the 90s and 2000s was absolutely bonkers in a good way. And I kind of really like that. There's a Target ad in here that's like, hey, besties, the PS2 is going to be available October 26, 2000, which, you know, there's a lot of conflicting information, and there obviously is like one true answer out there about if you had to pre-order or not. We're going to dig into that in a little bit here. I phoned a friend for that one, and so I'll give you the hot goss. So looking at what is in this issue, they obviously have like this big chunk of the fighter's edge where they talk about like strategies for fighting games, which I think is really interesting and cool. They're digging back into the Jackie Chan information and fighting games here, which is really cool. Lots of good cheats and stuff too in this issue. And yeah, here is the aforementioned Target ad staring me right in the face. Coming fall 2000 for $299.99. So I talked to unofficial historian of the podcast, someone who reached out to me with tons of information about what it really looks like and looked like for the PlayStation 2 release in the year 2000. And that is vs.danny.arcade on Instagram. Thank you so much, Danny, for all of your help always and all of your information and your guidance here. So Danny worked at a video game store during this time period and confirmed to me that places like EB Electronics, is that what it is? EB Games? Tell me. I would love to know. A lot of places like EB did pre-orders, while other places such as Target didn't do pre-orders for whatever their allotment of the PS2 would look like. So some folks actually camped out in front of a Target to get a PS2. And Danny shared with me that he was one of those folks, which I love. And Danny also sent me a very, very wild Reddit post that we will be talking about later. The information within it, it's from like Ask Historians, about how there were rumors and headlines about Saddam Hussein using PS2s to build a supercomputer. And in the letters to the editor, there's actually a little bit more information on this. But once we dig into like the actual release of the PS1, we will talk more about that kind of stuff. Very, very bonkers. But thanks again, Danny, for all of your help. I super duper appreciate it. And all of your guidance. Thank you. Thank you. So let's talk about the letters from and to the editor in this issue of GamePro. In the editor's letter saying GamePro goes exclusive. They got 3 exclusive game coverage stories for this month's issue, which is great. You know, they have like Spiderman, UFC on the Dreamcast, and then an Evil Dead game on PlayStation and Dreamcast. There's a lot of really good stuff here. You know, the letter from the editor I feel like there's a lot happening at this time, and this letter is just kind of like a cop-out that's like, hey, we have exclusive games for you, when all of this wild stuff with like the PS2 release is actually happening. So please give us more next month. That is my only ask. So the first letter to the editor, which I thought was actually very interesting, and I wanted to read the entire thing out to y'all, says, quote, my daughter and I were reading through some old magazines, and she asked me a question that I've asked myself quite a few times and haven't been able to answer. Quote, why aren't there any Black people on the editorial team of GamePro or other gaming publications? End quote. Is it that so very few of us apply? Does the industry see us as too insignificant? Or are we, for some reason, some unknown reason, just blackballed? I'm addressing this only to GamePro because I can get an honest answer here, and I respect your magazine's opinion. So GamePro's answer here is not my favorite. What they kind of without doing it, without saying this, they do this by saying Dr. Zombie and Major Mike are green, Dan Electro is silver, blah, 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 being like, we don't see color. That's Ugh, I hate that answer to everything. But they say here, the answer from GamePro is as you put it. Very few, if any, African Americans apply for employment here. You'd think that that wouldn't be the case, especially in a cosmopolitan city like San Francisco, but it is. In any case, GamePro is an equal opportunity employer. Gaming skill and editorial talent know no color boundary. When we hire new editors, we go with the candidates who have the best gaming and writing qualifications. There are professionals of many races in this industry. Why would you assume otherwise from simply reading words on a page? So we respectfully pass this one back to you. Why aren't there more Black people on editorial teams of gaming publications? Like I said, I have a million thoughts on this. I want to acknowledge that I am a white, cisgendered woman living in the United States, so there's a lot of different levels of privilege that come from my experience and my thoughts on this, but like, I send it back to GamePro in this era, which is like, they say, quote, very few African-American people apply to work here. That feels like a cop-out to me. Like, are you creating a work environment where people feel comfortable working in these spaces, feel like they're going to be respected, feel like they can bring their whole selves to work? That's my biggest thought. I think that it's interesting for them to put this question in here and then to give this response. I'm interested in seeing how this discourse and this dialogue unfolds over this decade of gaming, because it's questions that people have always been asking, but getting serious answers around them and figuring out the source of the actual issue instead of trying to just cure the symptoms is not something that was really valued until later on, I think. Interested in y'all's thoughts on this one as well, though. Another one interesting here I have in my notes in all bold, don't you dare glorify spray painting. Quote, I recently read your preview of Jet Grind Radio and I was outraged to see that this game incited spraying graffiti and breaking the law. I was also disappointed because I thought a great mag like GamePro wouldn't stoop so low as to publish an article that abetted gang-related acts. I'd also like to request that the next time you guys write an article about a game like this, that you trash it instead of making it sound cool. When I read that preview, it reminded me of Joe Camel and how he influenced kids to smoke. By making this game sound hip, you guys just became the Joe Camels of graffiti and gangs. How interesting is that? GamePro notes here, Jet Grind Radio takes place in a dystopian 21st century future where individuality of any kind is suppressed. Sound familiar? It shouldn't, because video games are fantasy. So true. What a very interesting letter and thought behind that. GamePro sums it up here like I do in this case. It's a game, have fun with it, and give us a break. Interesting. It's wild too, because like GamePro is just like so sassy for no reason sometimes in these letters. This person writes in a really nice letter about how they feel they are very good at Triple Play 2001. They enclose some Polaroids of their perfect games that they pitched. No runs, hits, walks, or errors. Every one of the computer settings was set to its highest level. That's the only way I play. Like, let me know what y'all think. They're just like rude, and they have a smart mouth answer and a real answer, but the real answer is also kind of smart mouth if you ask me. Their real answer is, yup, the two blurry to print Polaroids do indeed prove that you've mastered Triple Play 2001. Congratulations, that's really cool. Your commitment to pushing the pitch button is admirable, but you've still got to get out more. But then right after, they publish a photo that someone submitted, which I've noticed for the first time has a copy of The Sims in the background, which I think is beautiful, beautiful 2000 photo. It's a picture of a double jointed thumb. And they're like, cool, this is cool enough to publish. But they do not roast this person for submitting a photo. But they roast that other person who's just like, yo, I'm really excited. I'm really good at this game. And they're like, touch grass, dude. I don't love that myself. This one's interesting. It's titled War Games for Real. I heard a rumor that Japan's not allowing Sony to export the PlayStation 2 because its parts are powerful enough to launch missiles. Is this true? They say yes, or it was anyway. Japan's Department of Trade and Commerce places restrictions on devices that could have military applications, and the PS2's ability to process high-quality images quickly is one of the neat tricks often found in missile guidance systems. Oh my gosh, I feel like this ties into the rumor mill around Saddam Hussein using PS2s to do acts of war, and very, very interesting. GamePro says that the rules around the PlayStation 2 and video games in particular were amended around mid-April 2000, so it's no longer an issue, but holy bananas. the buyer's beware section, which is slowly becoming one of my favorites of this magazine because it kind of just like keeps it real about like what's broken and not working well. They talk a little bit about backwards compatibility between like PS1 accessories and PS2 accessories, which folks are stoked on. So all your PS1 memory cards and your controllers will work with your PS2. Blessings upon us all. Also, your multi-taps will work. I didn't know what that word meant, so I looked it up. And it's one of those things that you plug into one controller port and it basically expands it out so you can plug multiple controllers into one port, which I like. I knew that was a thing, but I did not know what it was called. So now we all know. If you didn't know, now you know. It's a multi-tap, allegedly. So they tested these. Oh. I'm actually reading now that it says, except for the multi-tap, the PS2's multi-tap adapters will be sold separately. But they say that the multi-tap didn't work on the Japanese version of the PS2. I need a multi-tap, obviously. I need to test this out because I own 2 PS2s and 2 PS1s. I got recently the thick PS2, and I think it actually has a hard drive on the back. I need to dig into that. I'm always happy to do testing. If you ever want me to try out a game or an accessory, I have a PO box. You can send that to me. I would love to do it. I would love to do the testing and gameplay work that folks are craving. Just send it to me because boy howdy does it get expensive to collect all of these things on your own. They talk a lot here too about PlayStation 1 games, as I refer to them, the late stage PlayStation 1 games, and how they were developed so that they won't work in a PS1 that has a mod chip. And it gives you this scary message that they post a screenshot of. It's like an all black screen with one of those like red mark out like no. And it says on top of it in white text, software terminated. Console may have been modified. Call this 800 number. So scary. I like too that GamePro makes a distinction. It's like, hey, besties. Mod chips are legal. You can make a chip. You can make a mod chip. The physical mod chip itself, independent of what it is doing, is legal. But installing one voids your PlayStation's warranty, and playing pirated games using one is illegal. But they're saying here, obviously, that like imported games aren't illegal, right? You can play Japanese games, but playing an illegally pirated game, which is kind of why this stuff is blocked more often, is illegal. Now we all know. The pro news section talks about something that I found so interesting and I really dug into with some of my research. Sony unveils the little PS1. So the PS1, the way that this is spelled out, like capital P, capital S, space, lowercase O-N-E. Just a little guy. So little and round. It's like a lighter, brighter, cute little color. It supports this little cute little LCD screen guy, right? Am I wild? Is that LCD? Yes. A 4-inch LCD screen. So small. I love it so much. iPhone screens are bigger now, right? Or am I wild? I have an LCD screen actually for my GameCube, but I don't think I've ever used it. I like want to be that person that like rolls up to a party, like holding my GameCube by the handle with like the LCD screen and being like, who wants to play SSX Tricky, Super Monkey Ball, whatever. I'm here. I've brought the party with me. That has not happened for me yet. I don't go to many parties. That's probably why. So the PS1 is 1/3 the size of an existing PS1. And the Japanese version of the PS1 actually supports a cable hookup that lets you transfer cell phone data. I was like, why, how, what, why would you want to do this? So I Googled, I dove in. I found a really, really cool Twitter thread from an account named Foone, F-O-O-N-E on Twitter. A really, really cool thread. I followed this account for a while because they just post lots of really cool like software, hardware, some like Y2K era video game stuff that I just think is great. And so I was not shocked to see them have an entire thread on this topic. They talked about how I'll link the thread in the show notes as well here for this episode. The cell phone technology was based around NTT Domoko's iMode enabled cell phones. There were some compatible games like Dragon Warrior Monsters 1 and 2. You could use iMode from your cell phone connecting to your PS1 to upload monsters from the PS1 version onto your mobile phone version of the same game. And then they had another game with connectivity, One Piece Mansion, which is unrelated to the manga/anime. You could also get email emails from characters in the game with iMode. You could browse the web on the PS1 via your cell phone connection, send and receive emails, manage contacts. Basically, phone functionality would be brought to the larger screen of your PS1 or your larger yet still small 4-inch screen of the LCD flip-up for the PS1. You can also download emails to your PS1 memory card. Why would you do that? I don't know. Nobody knows. Food included a really, really interesting video that I'll link in the notes of this episode about like some of the software in action. Really, really cool aesthetic. It's like friendly, pastel, cute graphics, like very approachable, and like a really cool way to utilize interesting technology that seems so second nature to us now. Everything just kind of connects to each other most of the time. But this was like a very new concept 22 years ago. So I love it. GamePro calls this a, quote, related story. In a related story, I don't think so. Nintendo has unveiled a special Pikachu edition of the Nintendo 64. While the hardware inside remains the same, the new unit features Pikachu on the casing, and his cheeks light up when the console's powered on. I love the Hey You Pikachu N64, which, you know, they're banking on the popularity with that. I actually saw one of these in person at last year, 2021's Classic Game Fest. It was one of the first things bought because I went in early. I had like VIP. This was before I was a special guest at Classic Game Fest, which is an incredible retro video gaming convention. Tons of merchants, tons of great speakers and awesome things happening. It's in Austin, Texas in July 2023. Maybe I'll be there. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. But I went in 2021 and that thing went so fast. It's really, really sick. I can't imagine how expensive they are on eBay. Maybe not that expensive, but they're so cute. And the little cheeks lighting up. There's like a Pokeball for the power button. It's great. In the pro news, they also mentioned that Nintendo, in the month of June, shipped its 100 millionth Game Boy, which includes the black and white versions as well as the Game Boy Color. Quote, at a time in the industry when obsolescence, is that how I say that word? Lurks around every corner, it's a sobering thought that software bought 11 years ago still runs just fine. And I must say, is that a sobering thought? Aren't we praising the PS2 for having backwards compatibility? Am I wild? Is 11 years just simply too old to have games with backwards compatibility? I thought it was so cool that I could continue to play a Game Boy game on my Game Boy Advance SP. Why not? Very, very interesting take that they're like, whoa, can you believe it? 11 years ago. Bonkers. They mention here that Sony is also boosting their PS2 chip production. 2 million PS2 units will be shipped and available in the US by March. The console's coming out in a month in October. They question, is a PS2 shortage imminent? Spoiler alert, it absolutely is imminent. Oh my gosh. We mentioned in a few episodes ago, episode 5 in particular, that the Song Boy is a thing, but Nintendo says, no, we would not like this to be a thing. So if you don't remember the Song Boy, you can use it to play MP3s on your Game Boy Color. So you load the MP3s onto the Song Boy, and then they are visually displayed on the screen of the Game Boy Color, and then the music comes out of that. They applied to become an official Nintendo licensee. Not only did Nintendo deny that request, they were like, cool request, we're suing you. Bonkers. The blurb says, while the Song Boy is capable of displaying lyrics and album artwork on the Game Boy screen, the unit currently uses the Game Boy only as a power source, as Nintendo licenses only software, not hardware. So their mind here is that if Song Boy is awarded a license, the visual features can be activated. So like they could just have the Song Boy still working, getting power from the Game Boy Color, but just nothing will come up on the screen. But either way, Nintendo's mad. I wrote in here, I can see where the drama lies. If they aren't licensing the hardware out and this relies on hardware, because Nintendo's not saying, hey, yeah, you can use our hardware. Here's the license, bestie. They're not doing that. Songboy insists they didn't violate any patents or trademarks. Nintendo has a policy on not commenting on lawsuits, but they say they are protecting customers. Nice. We also have a big cover story here. In my mind, big. But it's a mild blurb on this page. Not huge, but not tiny. It says Microsoft buys Bungie. Bill Gates finally earned a Halo, but heaven only knows how much it cost him. Microsoft finally acquired a software developer, Bungie, makers of Myth, Oni, and Halo. Quote, the irony in this situation is that Bungie started as a Macintosh-only developer, and they share the fun fact here that Halo's first public demo was at a Macintosh trade show. Master Chief's definitely on the mind for me. I went to TwitchCon last weekend, and there was a guy there, incredible Halo Master Chief suit, and he was on stage with Megan Thee Stallion at the concert. So interesting that like this phenomenon is just slowly building up in the magazine, not realizing, we can never realize how big things are really going to get. Absolutely bonkers. I love it. Alrighty then, we have another section that I do love that I hope continues to get bigger and bigger and more cool, and that is NetPro. That is where they talk about online connectivity, the net, and our pro news about it. Dreamcast Online hands-on part 1, the Dreamcast Online Sega-specific ISP, Sega Net, is being released on September 7th. I'm so excited. GamePro got their hands on a beta version of the 4x4 Evolution, which we had talked about previously. The screenshots look really slick. I mean, like, it's hard to not have a crisp 4x4 Ford Escape. That's not that hard to make look good. It's not like they're replicating human faces here, but it does look really sharp. And they mention here that they're playing the beta. They're pulling 200 to 400 millisecond ping, no noticeable lag or dropped frames, and it's also cross-platform. It looks like in this here, the games are hosted by one person and connected to by another. And so now I'm like so curious, and maybe I'll do research in my own time about the technical specifications and how all of this actually works. I'm very interested in the actual technical implementation of some of this early online gaming. Like, were they connecting to a server somewhere? Were they just hosting local games? Like, how did that work? How did they make trade-offs between different games and how they would do that? Tell me everything. I want to know. They talk a lot about how to actually get online using SegaNet, whatever your ISP claims, actually. Sega claims that you'll have better gaming performance on SegaNet, their ISP, with its tweaks for gaming connection. Very interesting stuff. The other online games they mention, in addition to 4x4 Evolution, are Railroad Tycoon 2, not necessarily a game I'm dying to play online with my friends, along with PBA Tour Bowling 2001. Maybe, but I'm not like, I can't wait to get online and bowl with my friends, but maybe I'm not the target audience. That is completely acceptable to me as well. So we get into our cover feature story, which is Spiderman. GamePro has a pretty decent review for it. They think that the only issues with the game really are the camera work. It's not great. They say that it keeps this web slinger from flying as high as he possibly can. As mentioned earlier, I played this demo. It absolutely kicked my butt. But the reviews are overall positive. 4.5 on graphics, 4.0 on sound, 4.0 control, 4.5 on fun. Not bad. They talk about all of the what I mentioned and call them baddies, all of the enemies of Spider-Man that you play against in this game, and there are quite a few. I'm excited. The Spider-Man lore has been very new to me recently, but it looks like they have like a lot built into this game. It's not like a one-trick pony here, which I think is great. Also, GamePro has a little interview in here with Stan Lee that I thought was really, really sweet. And there's one little blurb of this that I wanted to call out specifically in my notes here. They ask, "What's the best part of being Stan Lee?" And Stan Lee comments, "Being able to work with the world's most talented, creative people. It's like I spend my whole life in one gigantic, fun-filled playpen." I think that's so cool. He acknowledges that, like, it's all about the people around you and the work that you're doing with them, these fun people, and that can often make it even better to be yourself and work in these environments. So I think that's really, really neat that they included that interview and that Stan said all that stuff. Great dude. Great dude. So they very quickly changed tunes from a wholesome interview with Stan Lee that I love to, quote, the real Fight Club. So this is a GamePro exclusive coverage of UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship on PlayStation 1 and the Dreamcast, which is so interesting to me seeing this in the year 2000. I do not know what bubble I was living in. I did not know that UFC was a thing until like maybe 2008, 2009, but like good for them. And I fully acknowledge that this game is probably not my jam, but that's fine. Good for them. Good for the folks into this. There are martial art styles featured in this game and in real life UFC. I wrote a list of all of them. I was going to read them all out to you, but there are so many. There are 26 total. There's 26 letters in the alphabet, right? That's a lot of styles. So I think that's great. The graphics look decent. This is obviously a little bit hard to code and program, I'd imagine, because you have so many different elements that are happening in your fights. I think that's great. Good for them. Good for the folks into this. Good for this game. Go Dreamcast. That's what I'll say, right? The final exclusive is Evil Dead: Hail to the King, that is available on PlayStation and the Dreamcast. I'm not sure if they're showing screenshots from the Dreamcast version or the PlayStation version. It looks a little PlayStation chunky to me, but it's hard to say. There's obviously a difference between the Dreamcast and the PlayStation version, but I think it's really cool. They have like good wide angle shots that give a real like environmental, you can see what's going on in the area around you, which I think is really great. I must respectfully ask from the bottom of my heart, GamePro magazine, everyone else, stop telling me and stop showing me advertisements for Half-Life on the Dreamcast. It never happened. They have a beautiful advertisement. Just gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. Reserve your copy now. Half-Life features new characters, weapons, and enhanced effects specially designed to exploit the power of the Sega Dreamcast. Half-Life's incredibly advanced AI is used to fill the game with uncomfortably realistic adversaries. And intelligent characters and intense story create an experience unlike any other action game ever made. Yes, I'm in. I'm there. I want it. Oh my gosh, www.gameoftheyear.com. Play it on Sega Dreamcast Fall 2000. Stop breaking my heart. That is what I ask. They have a review for Diablo 2 on the PC. Excellent reviews. 5.0 graphics, 4.5 sound, 5.0 controls, 5.0 fun factor. I don't know if this is the game for me, but I do appreciate and have appreciation for that. Deus Ex, 5.0 across the board. Graphics, sound, control, fun factor. I bought this on Steam, and I really, really do want to play it, but every time I try to launch it on my Windows 10 machine, it crashes. But the recommended system requirements for this game are Windows 95 or 98, a Pentium 3 or 450 processor, I'm assuming, 40 megabytes of RAM, 700 megabytes of available storage space on your hard drive. My computer just isn't that. My computer can't be that. That is what's letting me down. I want to play this game so bad, though. I've heard extremely good things forever, and I can't play it. And that is my cross to bear. I swear to you. They have a pretty big feature here on like the world is not enough. The newest version of the James Bond moments that are happening on the N64. In my notes here, I just have, these graphics are not enough. Got them. That is all I will say. They have a first look at Hey You Pikachu, which of course I'm very into. I'm like, yeah, let's get into it. But they talk a lot of smack, in my professional opinion. They say, Hey You Pikachu isn't really a game so much as an attempt to be a fun activity like Pokemon Snap, which I think is a wholly weird take, because Pokemon Snap is a game. If you're doing things with like a set list of things to do, you're not just wandering around. Even if you were just wandering around, that's still a game. That's bonkers to me. Also, this game has been out in Japan for over a year. I want it. I think I might have it. I think somebody sent me a copy via my P.O. box, and boy howdy, I'm excited. I've always wanted this game. When it came out, I had it on my Christmas list forever, and I never got it. And so I think this might be my Hey You Pikachu era. I think that's very exciting. So, as mentioned, they continue to hurt my heart and hurt me personally by talking more and more about Half-Life on the Dreamcast. Whether or not the Dreamcast can serve as a good platform for ports of top-notch PC games will soon be decided when Half-Life comes to the 128-bit console. Ow, it doesn't. Why are you doing this to me? The graphics look great, though, but I'm trying to decide if a lot of these are from like a multiplayer mode, which I've never played any kind of like Half-Life 1 multiplayer. I think that's sick. So the Dreamcast is going to have all the levels of the PC original, plus, as we know, Half-Life, is it Blue Shift? Am I wild? The one where you can play as Barney, which I did play on PC. It crashed right at the end, though, but I think I beat it. But still, I would love to play this on the Dreamcast. Ow, 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 ow. They mentioned a game that looks very, very interesting. I thought was so silly. And let me find it here in the magazine. I want to look at the screenshots because they make me smile. So many advertisements and so many games brought up in this issue, which I think is obviously excellent. You want lots and lots of game content here, but they have a very, very small little blurb for this game, and that's called Deuce, and that's on PS1. So you're a two of hearts. You're a playing card. You're tasked to rescue members of the royal family. You solve puzzles. You defeat people in combat. You become a knight. You're trying to defeat the Jack of Spades, and then also apparently a dragon. Spoiler alert, this game got canceled. There's an unreleased version that's made its way out, like a technical preview. I have a link to the YouTube video. I'll include that in the notes of the podcast. The screenshots do look fun, and this just seems like kind of like a fun and little silly game that they're just like, no thanks. So that kind of stinks. I also note here that there is Rayman 2 is coming out, and it has pretty good reviews. Rayman 2, The Great Escape. I own one Rayman game, I think, and that's Rayman Origins on Wii. Should I play that to understand what is happening with Rayman? If I play Rayman Origins, will I learn what happened to Rayman's limbs? That's what I want to know. They also here, hilariously, I really should have read ahead. I should have looked into the future. They have a specific review of Seaman on the Dreamcast, which if you remember last episode, that was the deep dive, was Seaman on the Sega Dreamcast. They say, quote, Seaman is packed with Sega's mini microphone, which is great to know that when you buy, you would buy the game, it would come with the microphone. So you're not like, dag nabbit Sega, I need a peripheral. It's just like, Bessie, I got you. Here's the peripheral. They say that this game is, quote, odd, disturbing, weird. These are some of the words that may describe your first encounter with Seaman. They give the graphics a 2.5, which I think is really harsh. I think they look fine. I think that it's just as much as you need, but probably I'm very biased. I really, really, really need this game, as we know. I want it for Christmas. That's what I'm asking for, is this game for Christmas. It's not going to happen. Unless Santa Claus, if you are listening to this podcast while prepping for the season, please, please, please give me a copy of Seaman for the Sega Dreamcast with the microphone foam. That would be really cool too. I'd also like to reshell my Dreamcast, so please include a shell. Thank you, Santa. You are great. I appreciate you. So in this, they also have a deeper review of Eternal Darkness on the N64, which we mentioned in a previous issue. It was talked about at E3. A chilling experience this October. Womp womp, you have to wait for the dolphin for Eternal Darkness, which is a game I also want for Christmas. Actually, I want Eternal Darkness for Halloween. So the Great Pumpkin, if you are listening to this podcast, I beg of thee, deliver me a copy of Eternal Darkness for the dolphin, aka the GameCube. I want to play it so badly. Please, Great Pumpkin, I beg of thee. Coming next GamePro issue for October, the PlayStation 2 launch. It's all happening. Parasite Eve 2. I don't know what the first one's like, but I'm certainly going to tell you about the second. Banjo-Tooie, we've been waiting. Dreamcast Online Gaming, deeper hands-on reviews. And a GamePro exclusive review of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. One of my favorite games of all time. I love it. I just watched a documentary about Tony Hawk. Man, he sure did make a lot of money on video games. Good for that guy. That is coming in next month's issue of GamePro, October 2000. I'm stoked. So that wraps up our coverage of GamePro from September 2000. We're going to take a quick break. As mentioned, you are listening to Today in Gaming Yesterday with your host, Emma Pearl. That's me. Enjoy the break, and we will be back with Nintendo Power. See you in a sec. Welcome back to Today in Gaming Yesterday. We are digging into September 2000. We just covered GamePro. We're now going to talk Nintendo Power from this month. My name is Emma Pearl, and I love this stuff. I love it. I can't get enough. This month's issue of Nintendo Power, at the very top, exclusive 007 returns. The world is not enough. As mentioned, are the graphics enough? The cover art itself, though, stunning. Dark black background with 2 Pokemon on it because it's about Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver. Woo! Gotta catch them here. Oh, clever, clever, clever. Power previews in this month's issue for Sarge's Heroes 2, Taz Express, and plugs for Perfect Dark and Dragon Warrior 1 and 2. I'm guessing, look, hindsight is 2020. In perfect color is how they say that those games are being presented to you because they're on the Game Boy Color. They're just really extending the Perfect Dark IP, and I think that's great. They're like capitalizing on how good that game was for N64, and they're like, hey, if you love that, put it on your handheld. Kids and adults, I think that game's rated M. Kids, do not play Perfect Dark without adult supervision and permission. I beg of thee. Why am I saying that so much today? What's going on in my brain? I can't tell you. I'll never know. The Gold and Silver version of Recap is going to be very fun, though. I loved those games. I still need to beat Silver, though. We've talked about it. The Players' Pulse letters to the editors this week are, thank goodness, they are not themed. I personally don't love it. I want like the real pulse of what's actually going on at this time. I think it's great. But I will say that most of the letters they chose to publish are just corrections that people have and, quote, why did you do it this ways? Which I guess is the point of a letter to the editor. And Nintendo's responses are getting sassy. And I was kind of shocked because these are literally like Nintendo spokespeople, but like, whatever. They probably have to keep up with GamePro in this sense, right? They also have, in my mind, a fun throwback / call out to things that just didn't pan out. Someone asks, what is the N64 disk drive and what does it do? I've only seen it in back issues of Nintendo Power and never in any stores. Tigress from the internet asked that question. Let me find their response because I wanted to read it. This is from Nintendo themselves. The Nintendo 64 disk drive, or 64DD as it is more commonly known, is a read/write drive capable of holding approximately 64 megabytes of information. It is compatible with only a limited number of games and was released in Japan last year, but at this time there are no plans to release it in other markets. So true. I would love to do a deep dive about it, but I love this PR response from Nintendo. At this point of this writing, of this publication, the writing was on the wall for the 64DD and RandNet, which was how the 64DD got online in Japan. That service only ended up netting maybe 15,000 subscribers max. It was officially discontinued in February 2001, and I doubt that they will ever speak about it in the US Nintendo Power ever again, because they're probably just going to be like, hey, it's not going to be released, and then they're just going to pretend it never existed, because they can just push that under the rug. Don't even worry about it. Don't even ask about it again, and don't worry about it. I have this paraphrase question here. Is there a CD of the score of Ocarina of Time played by an actual orchestra, or is it the synthesized music? Because there's a musical CD released for that game. Nintendo says, as much as we would love to hear Saria's song, did I say it wrong? Let me know. Performed in Glorious THX by the Boston Pops, the Zelda Ocarina CD is the synthesized score. They say it's still worth it to check it out, but like, is that available on YouTube now? I think it is available on YouTube. I also think that the suggestion via this letter from an anonymous person via the internet is really fun. Maybe this is a fake question because it's anonymous. They can't like make up a name, I bet. This says, I just wanted to make a suggestion for the paint jobs on the Game Boy Advance. I think you should consider letting people custom design their own casings. You could start a special section in your online store with a blank Game Boy Advance, give customers a palette of colors to choose from, and let them go wild. Then you could ship the precious hardware to their door. It would be great. I really do think that that is cool. I think that that's neat. And I'm looking for their response. They're always good at dodging really good things. We can see it now. Game Boy Mona Lisa, Game Boy Still Life with Bowl of Fruit. Hello. When you're making games for kids, the kids want to customize everything, and I really like that. I want it. Someone also asks about Ubisoft. Ubisoft's newest characters all have something in common. None of them have arms or legs. I asked the same question earlier. What happened to Rayman's arms and legs? Rocket the Robot, Rayman, and Ed from Tonic Trouble are all minus their limbs. Why did they do it? Do they have an aversion to appendages? Is it because they spent so much time on the games that people down there literally had to spend an arm and a leg to produce them? I want a real answer. It's all a joke. It's all a joke, but I need to actually know what happened to Rayman's limbs. If you know, if there's lore, you have to tell me. Legally, you have to tell me. Probably not legally. That's a joke. For anyone listening, that is a joke. But please tell me. I want to know. I'm dying to know. So time for my favorite part of Nintendo Power, which is where they discuss at length their very confusing online strategy. Oh my God, I can't wait. Nintendo Power Online. If it's just going to be new websites every month, moving forward. I wrote in my notes, I may scream. I'm here to confirm to you, I will scream. I will scream. Nintendo, don't do this to me. Quote, quote, what better way to while away those boring hours in computer class than with a heaping portion of Nintendo.com? Is that a phrase? Whittle away, while away? Is that a phrase? I could probably Google it. Don't roast me if you want, but know that I don't need to be roasted to eventually Google it. So I have an exciting website to tell you about. That's mariotennis.com. And it actually is a little exciting because they're hosting online tournaments. I wanted to know how it worked. Do you need Mario Tennis to compete in them? So I went to the Wayback Machine and I did find the answers. There are different tournaments and cups. Quote, twice a month we'll reveal a new password. Then you enter that password into your game, you play a version, you enter your result code onto the website. There are tons of cups for this Mario Tennis online moment, one for each character in the game, and there's also a mariotennis.com cup. So as of November 2000, the Peach Cup standings in that time, top 20 scores range from 93, first place, to 35th and 20th. But I wonder how many people actually submitted to this. How many people were going through the process of entering in those codes on their N64 version of Mario Tennis, as well as entering them in on the website so that they can have their scores counted. That is what I want to know. So if you did that, if you're listening to this, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you're probably wondering why I'm trying to get a hair out of my face, because it's really in my eyelash. Nevertheless, let me know. It's kind of interesting too. I noted in here, it's an interesting way to use online functionality where it's like kind of like a more of a message board moment. Like how Satellaview, when we dug into that deep dive, like how Satellaview was like, hey, you're playing online and we want to know how you did, but like, you're not going to beam it back to us via this functionality that you're using. You're going to just mail it in. This is like a late 90s, early 2000s way of mailing something in, right? You're just submitting your score, which seems like a safer bet for something like Nintendo to dig into instead of creating their entire own ISP like Sega's trying. Jeez Louise. But I wonder if somebody could be trusted to make their own ISP, would we trust Nintendo in that faction more than Sega? Which Nintendo did do some interesting acquisitions and interesting partnerships, especially with things like Satellaview and RandNet with the 64DD that didn't end up panning out. But I guess that probably ended up better for them in the long run. I want to know if the SegaNet ISP like drowned Sega. Because I don't think SegaNet still exists, obviously. Maybe it does. Maybe I'm wild. It's possible. Thrilled to tell you all about Waluigi.com, which also exists. And now that I'm looking at this, it says Mamma Mia, it's Waluigi, spelled M-A-M-M-A Mia, Mamma Mia, like ABBA Mamma Mia, which is how I also spell Mamma Mia, but I got roasted on Twitch because, very, very long story short, I did a stream where I played Super Mario Bros. 3. At one point, I was talking like Mario and doing a bad Mario impression for 5 minutes. And I made a sound command so that somebody enters the command in my Twitch chat, it'll play a sound. And I spelled it M-A-M-M-A-M-I-A. It's me saying something and it ends with Mamma Mia. And I got roasted that it should be M-A-M-A Mia, but it's Mamma Mia in here. So in conclusion, I am right. Thank you so much. Waluigi apparently needs his entire own website, waluigi.com. Quote, he's lean, he's mean, he hates the color green. Love rhyming. It contains photos, secret information, and online games such as Waluigi's Toenail Clipping Party. Sounds cool. They also mentioned that a Space World wrap-up is available on, I think, maybe Nintendo.com or NintendoPower.com. They don't exactly say. But I am very interested in that coverage because it talks about the Dolphin and the GBA, Game Boy Advance. I want that. Tell me, like, they don't tell you where it actually is, whether that's on Nintendo.com or NintendoPower.com. Please, Nintendo Power, tell me. GameBoy.com is mostly just Game Boy reviews, boring. PerfectDark.com, they're just continuing to really dig into that game in particular. They do a big website listing. I'm not going to read them all to you for my own mental well-being's sake, but they do call out the news sites in a yellow font, which are just Mario Tennis and Waluigi.com. Sorry, dudes. Let us now talk about Pokemon Gold and Silver. They're telling you to catch them both. They want you to buy both of them. So it's an October 15th North America release. They talk about characters are going to meet, like your mom. That sounds kind of sassy out of context. You will meet your mom. Mom, in Pokemon Gold and Silver, you're going to meet Professor Elm. You're going to meet your rival, who you get to name, of course. All he's interested in is winning Pokemon battles at any cost. Dang. They have a nice little walkthrough of some earlier parts of the game in this issue of Nintendo Power, which I think is really cool. They have a little walkthrough of battles, navigating the battle screen. I think that's really cool to like get folks who may not have been super into red, blue, yellow to kind of get them into the world now with silver and gold. I think that's great. I also wanted to give a specific shout out to the experience bar in silver, the one that would go whoop and it would, tell you how much experience to level up. Oh, I loved that. The satisfying thing when you had like a really underleveled Pokemon who like made an appearance in a battle and then they got a lot of experience and it went whoop up, whoop up. Oh man, that's serotonin, baby. Even thinking about it, I'm like, nice. They have a lot of information on the new starters too. Chikorita, Cyndaquil, and Totodile. I was like a Chikorita gal. Am I saying that right? Let me know how you pronounce it. I need to know, but I was like a Chikorita kid, which is so interesting. Because I don't know. I think I just thought it was the cutest. Those little eyes, that little mouth. Oh, very cute. To take us away from something so beautiful and wonderful as Pokemon is The World Is Not Enough, 007. Rated T for teen. Violence and intense situations that the ESRB has deemed inappropriate for children under the age of 13. The graphics in these screenshots look way better than I'm assuming what the actual graphics are. And this game obviously didn't take off like GoldenEye. So womp womp. Did Rare make it? Who developed and published? Who did this game? I'm guessing it's not the GoldenEye folks because they were busy raking in the cash from Perfect Dark. Am I right? They also have an entire article that compares all of the confusing 2001 games for the NFL. NFL Quarterback Club 2001. Who's that? New one to me. Madden 2001 and NFL Blitz 2001. How many freaking games are there? I'm over it. I can't possibly read an article about how all these games are different because I could never care enough. Maybe I could at some point, but that time is not today. I'm filming this on a Saturday and it's college football time right now. My Nebraska Cornhuskers don't play until the evening, though. Thank goodness. They have a feature about Pokemon Puzzle League, which I always thought, like, aesthetically looks so pleasing and cute, but respectfully, I hate puzzles. I hate it. And, like, thinking about this game, it's so wild that now we have, like, puzzles of similar quality, like puzzle games that are just available on our phones all the time. Like, I can't imagine booting up an entire N64, settling down in front of my big CRT TV to just, like, play a puzzle game. But I guess I actually did that with the NES and Tetris when I was in high school, which is a really cool lore reveal about how popular I was growing up. That I'd come home from school and just boot up that NES, baby. I want to play Tetris. I got some pretty good scores back in those days. They have a lot of strategies, too, for Pokemon Puzzle League, which I think is really cute. And the graphics and the way that this is laid out is just beautiful. I love Jolteon, too. He's so cute. I'm going to get a Jolteon tattoo. I'm going to add to my Pokemon sleeve this cute image from like a Pokemon Seek and Find book that came out of Jolteon in a Jeep. I actually own a 93 YJ Jeep Wrangler. And so I'm going to have an artist like redraw the Jeep to be that. And then he's going to be writing that on my arm somewhere. I don't know where. I also need like a Ditto on my arm. We all know. Ditto's my fave. Ditto's my absolute fave. What a baby. So the next thing that really stood out to me in this issue of Nintendo Power is this huge feature and really interesting insight into the development of Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Also, for the record, Taz Express is about the Tasmanian devil. That's my callback to that's my callback to talking about the cover. I'm like, who is Taz Express and why should I care? It's a Tasmanian devil, and I still don't know why I should care. But that's the truth. If you're a Looney Tune listening to this podcast, I'm so sorry. Okay. Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, Behind the Mask. It's a really interesting, like, day in the life journal diary moment of the localization process for the game's English screen text. So, as you know, Zelda games across the board, they have a ton of text. There's a lot of story. There's a lot happening. So there's a lot of localization work that has to be done. And so localization, if you don't know what that means, I don't know if we talked about it on this podcast or if I've talked about it on stream 100 times. It's basically translating and tweaking the games that come from Nintendo of Japan and making them more appropriate for audiences in a different region. So specifically, like this one talks about for an American audience. So they write new scripts, they rename characters, they find these subtle differences that, like, if you took a literal translation, it may not make sense. So they provide like the cultural context and then rework things so that they make more sense. There's some examples in here that I think will be interesting. They said that there were 8,000 script pieces to rewrite. And according to this, they're saying that all of that localization work is going to fall on one dude, which is a lot. Kind of sad. So this interesting localization bit that I thought, quote, the Japanese word aunt is a synonym for a middle-aged woman. Luckily, we caught the mistake, so now the mayor's wife isn't already related to her future daughter-in-law. That's a confusing statement to me, especially because I don't know what Majora's Mask is all about. It's one of those, like, I'm keeping it very quiet so I can play it later with no context situations, but localization, baby. They say here, quote, development began in August 1999, though ideas for a sequel began right after Ocarina was finished, and the team rarely got to go home. As a result, many of the characters talk about not being able to spend time with their wives. That is sad. That is very sad that, like, development started for this game so quickly after Ocarina of Time, and, like, the team didn't get to go home. And so they're, like, putting their own sad personal experience into this game, and they can't spend time with their wives. That's sad, dude. That's very sad. It's wild, though. I thought that this part was interesting, which is that, you know, when a game releases in Japan and then comes out months, maybe even a year or more later, like there's an NA version that gets released based on that version, they can take feedback from that Japanese version and they can implement features into the game. In Majora's Mask, they say that they implemented mid-quest saves instead of only being able to save every 3 days based on overwhelming feedback from the Japanese version, which I think is really cool. So the localization efforts that happened, and so the language releases for this game were Japanese, obviously, English, Spanish, French, and German. Each team had their own writer and localization person, and then when they did actually all go to Japan and work with the Japanese team on this game and their own localization, they all had their own translator for the in-person work when they were doing that in Japan, which I thought was really cool. This diary only lasts 40 days, but I desperately hope that this game took longer than 40 days to localize, because that's like 8,000 pieces in 40 days. I'm not really good at in-head math, but holy bananas. That's a lot. The Poke Center, one of my favorite pieces of Nintendo Power, as we know, talks all about more gold and silver fun facts. And I never realized this, maybe because like I didn't beat silver and I haven't ever tried to replay it, I don't think. But I didn't realize this, but like they let you trade between like red and blue and yellow to silver and gold. But every Pokemon Center, in order to facilitate those trades, has a time capsule. So you can trade with games of the past via the time capsule. But it's not available immediately, which kind of makes sense because they're like, yo, you can't like bust through the first few chunks of the game by just transferring in your super powerful guy from your Pokemon Yellow, which totally makes a lot of sense. Also, I'd like to extend a formal congratulations to the Poke Chat of the Poke Center for announcing that Poke Center has its own email address, pokecenter@nintendo.com. Why not nintendopower.com? We will never know. There's a question about using the item finder in Pokemon Red and that it sucks. And it does suck. I forgot about that and how big of a pain that is. Someone also asks, what is the point of Hey You Pikachu? That's the entire question, which I think is funny. They say in here, Hey You Pikachu is a voice recognition game that allows you to speak to Pikachu and interact with it in a variety of interesting situations. You often have to coach Pikachu through its activities, giving it advice, direction, and support. So you could say the point is that you get to talk and play with Pikachu, but the real point of Hey You Pikachu, or any game, is to have fun. And with a game as innovative and interactive as Hey You Pikachu, players are sure to have a blast. That's obviously like some PR, like, you still want to buy this stuff, but I agree. Like, it's so wild that GamePro's like, not a game, you just talk to Pikachu. That's a game, brother. That's a game. They're saying, like, you know, maybe this isn't worth it, blah, because it's not an entire huge Pokemon RPG moment, but it can still be worth it. Also, very interesting that there is confirmed Mew drama in this episode. This question asks, will I be able to catch Mew in Pokemon Gold and Silver? Is there any way to catch a Mew? I heard you can catch Mew by ... Nintendo Power, and Poke Center cuts off the question. They chop it. And they say this sassy response begins with, here we go again. We've answered this one before, but it keeps coming up. The only way to get a true Mew is to get it from the good people here at Nintendo, either by winning a contest or signing up at a special event like the Pokemon Stadium Tour. The situation will not change when Gold and Silver come out. Drama. And they obviously hated the Mew hack. You can tell via the stats of the Mew if you look into a Mew that you have in red, blue, yellow. You can tell if it was a Nintendo contest Mew or a, a Mew hack Mew. You can kind of tell. And it's interesting that they're still trying to keep up the lore of getting a Mew in these games when the magic is over. We talked a lot about how that they built in the Mew and built in the lore around it, but that lore has died off. There's an entirely new generation of Pokemon. Why are they gatekeeping Mew still? Nintendo, give me answers. Perfect Dark on Game Boy Color, blah, blah, blah. We've all seen it. We've all heard it. I'm not necessarily interested. I've been so disappointed by Game Boy Color games. Maybe that's just my own hot take, but I don't love it. I've never been wow, this Game Boy Color game is a really good use of my time. I think the only exception to that is a Wario game I picked up. So I probably won't. I'm not super interested in picking up Perfect Dark on the Game Boy Color. It looks very interesting. It looks like there's a lot of maps. There's a lot to do. Maybe I'm wrong. If you've played Perfect Dark on Game Boy Color, roast me. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me why I should want to pick this game up. I've never even looked it up on eBay, so I don't know how expensive it is. But keep me posted. I need to know. So they have in here a very huge thing of the tennis challenge details. They say, quote, winning is based on how many rings you can hit a ball through. So you'll enter a code into the game, and then this mode is pre-coded into the game, and then you get your score, you release it. You have to admire Nintendo for planning this out so far in advance. Cause I think about this quite frequently when I'm playing something like Animal Crossing on GameCube, the North American version that's released on GameCube. That was actually the N64 version in Japan. I could talk about that forever. They had to code that stuff in ahead of time because it's not like today's world of Switch games where they can push and update. You code that baby in, you code in all of your future tournaments, you code in codes that you're going to give out at events. You put all of that in ahead of time. And so it's kind of nice, I think, because you can take advantage of it in the future. But they had to do a lot of pre-work, which I think is really rad. Prizes for these real world contests include a literal tennis racket with a Nintendo case, and Nintendo Power tennis balls. I would love to see if there's Nintendo Power tennis balls on eBay. I'm going to look it up right now because I am insatiable for information. Nintendo Power tennis balls. Okay, I'm getting everything but what I'm exactly looking for. You can buy 100 used tennis balls for $55. Thank you so much, eBay. I'm reading a book about eBay right now that was written in 2002. Full tangent, very interesting. So there are some notable Game Boy releases. Little Mermaid 2 Pinball, which I think I've actually played before. It seems so familiar to me, but I have my own hot take here. I think that the Game Boy Color is perfect for pinball games because you have full color. There's enough functionality that it's interesting. I love that. There's also a Microsoft Best of Entertainment pack where they have free sell a bunch of silly little games that you would play on your Microsoft computer are now ported onto the Game Boy Color, including Ski Free, which I love. I played that as a kid in computer lab in the year 1999 or whatever. You can play Ski Free and get eaten by a Yeti on the Game Boy Color. I think that's so neat. I love it. There's also Qbert is being released, which I think is great. I sat next to the developer of Qbert at Classic Game Fest. Really nice guy. I have his book. I need to read it. There's a Tweety Bird game, which I wonder, did anybody else have a very brief Tweety Bird phase? Was that just me? If it's just me, I get it. If it's just me, I totally understand. Also, they have Cyber Tiger for the Game Boy Color, which I do want. I love a golf game. I don't know what the deal is. On stream this week, twitch.tv/I'mAPearl. I love to play retro games. I've been playing Animal Crossing on GameCube, and I finally looked up the codes to get NES games because the actual Animal Crossing on GameCube has like basically an NES emulator. I guess on the N64 too, technically for the Japanese version. But it has like an NES emulator, and so I can play NES Golf there. Which I love that game, but boy, howdy, it is so silent. It is a silent game. So they talk all about ratings, you know, the now playing section, the releases. The highest rated game of this issue is Madden NFL 2001 with an 8.1, which is like, I think like a mid-range score. Not great. The lowest scoring game of this issue, I'm so sorry to say, my Barbie fans, Barbie Fashion Pack Games got a 4.7. It was dinged for being boring. That's all right. I get it. Boring games exist, especially on the Game Boy Color. What a cop-out system for a lot of people, am I right? The Pack Watch has like some actual decent information. They reveal the Space World game lineup and all of the stuff that's featured there. 52 titles for Game Boy Color. As mentioned, I bet a lot of them are trash. And 14 for the N64. And there are first images from the Game Boy Advance, which I think is great. And I just noticed here, I didn't notice this when I was doing my research, they have a screenshot of Animal Crossing. On N64, it's called Animal Forest on the N64. It's so cute. I think that's Savannah, the zebra. Oh, that's cute. I wonder if they talk about it. In addition to the N64 games shown here. Oh my gosh, I love Animal Crossing. It's so fun. The one on GameCube, though, they absolutely will roast you and tell you you're annoying and get mad at you and be mean to you. And I think that's very interesting. They learned that kids don't necessarily want to be bullied by characters in video games, so they took that out in the future. Other hot goss from the Pack Watch. Banjo-Tooie dipped from summer to November release of this year in the year 2000. Majora's Mask allegedly being released October 26th. Gold and Silver October 15th. Hey You Pikachu November 6th. Even here, they qualify that game though, and they say, less a game than an interactive experience. Chill. Chill, chill, chill. Also, Paper Mario's coming out allegedly December 26th, but sad news, Conker's Bad Fur Day has been delayed until 2001. And I didn't realize that Paper Mario was like a late stage N64 game. I've heard very good things about it. I've never tried it myself though. Should I? Let me know. In the next issue of Nintendo Power, they will be digging into Majora's Mask, Turok 3. Thank goodness, more information on Gold and Silver because we need more Pokemon. And Mickey's Speedway USA. Thank goodness. A game I've never heard of, but I'm sure I'm the only one. Mickey's Speedway USA. Oh, it's from Rare. I bet it's mildly decent then. All right, y'all. We're going to take our second break of the episode. Thanks for listening to Today in Gaming Yesterday with Emma Pearl here, your host. Twitch.tv/I'mAPearl, streaming retro games. Twitter.com/Emma Pearl here. Hot takes about nostalgia, everything, and pictures of my cute dog who's laying in my lap right now. We're going to take this break, and then we are digging into our deep dive on backyard baseball, which is something I had always heard of, but something I never really knew that much about until this deep dive. This is highly requested. I cannot wait to tell you everything I learned. Keep it locked to Today in Gaming Yesterday, and I'll see you in a sec. Welcome back to Today in Gaming Yesterday. I'm your host, Emma Pearl, and it's time for this week's deep dive into backyard baseball. Heavily requested. I am so excited to share all this knowledge with you. I read a ton of articles, lots of great stuff. I cannot wait. So let's do it. Let's make this happen. Let's learn a bit about a beloved game to so many folks, backyard baseball. So I can say the 90s were like an interesting time to grow up in when it came to sports, kids' relation to sports games. For me personally, you know, I grew up, you can see this manifesting now in my tireless devotion to Nebraska Cornhuskers football. Sports were never something I wasn't allowed to get into. I played t-ball. I was into soccer. I loved sports. I played hockey as a kid. It was so much fun. But my parents never were really into like Major League Baseball. College baseball we could get into. Nebraska Cornhuskers, of course. Always the Cornhuskers. But like I said, MLB wasn't really something we were into. I've been to a few baseball games, but I can say that I have in my mind this nostalgic connection to baseball in the 90s. And that's because a lot of media was kind of focused on baseball and the relatability of it to kids. There were movies like The Sandlot, Rookie of the Year, like things that came out in the 90s and were on TV a lot. So I saw those movies as a kid. I thought they were great. Rookie of the Year is so wild to watch back now. And then The Sandlot, of course, is just like a classic for so many kids. So like baseball was a thing in the 90s, and connecting kids to baseball and making it a kid sport was happening in the 90s. So if you'd actually believe it, baseball games that were geared specifically towards kids weren't necessarily a thing, because baseball games have come out forever on tons of different consoles and platforms, but a lot of those were very like formulaic, statistics driven, very predictable baseball games that featured primarily made up professional players or actual professional players, because a lot of them were in partnership with the MLB. We talked through some of these games showing up on bestseller lists, but a lot of these were a little bit more dry. They were pointed towards adults, to teenagers, whatever that looked like. It wasn't necessarily like a fun game you pick up as a kid and you're just like, I'm having fun and we're playing baseball. So I'd like to say, though, that I'm not talking smack on these types of games. I love these types of games in some circumstances. One of my favorite games that I played in childhood was actually Bo Jackson's Hit and Run, I think it was called, football and baseball on the Game Boy, like the OG Game Boy. I loved that game. When thinking about this game, I actually got into a very deep Wikipedia rabbit hole about Bo Jackson. What an interesting guy. If you didn't know, he played both professional football and professional baseball. He's very talented. And then he hurt himself in a way that only he could because he was so strong and capable. Wild stuff. But yeah, I loved those games. They were a little bit formulaic. They were less geared towards a kid like me, a little random 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old playing Bo Jackson games on a Game Boy. But, we still played them. But, it comes across a little bit stale when it comes to kids and what they were interested in and games like that and keeping it fun and light and fresh. So the developer behind the game, Backyard Baseball, Humongous Entertainment, they were actually already pretty known in the at least the PC game industry. They created adventure-style games with a focus on education. Games like Freddy Fish, Pajama Sam. I know that those names alone will often trigger these moments of joyous nostalgia for kids that grew up in this era, like the 90s, early 2000s, playing these fun educational games that, they were educational, but, you still had a pretty good time. I've heard very good things about Freddy Fish. So, yeah, these games existed, but it wasn't just the success of those games with kids that made Backyard Baseball happen. Weirdly enough, we have the success of the Seattle Mariners, the Major League Baseball team, in the year 1995 to thank for the actual creation of Backyard Baseball. The proposal for Backyard Baseball as a game sat on the desk of Ron Gilbert, a co-founder of Humongous, the developer. And then, the Mariners started getting good. Baseball was a cool thing to have happening in Seattle. And then Gilbert said, hey, this proposal, let's make it a thing. So let's all give a gracious shout out to Ken Griffey Jr. and the great work done for making Backyard Baseball actually end up happening. So when developing this game, Humongous, when working on this, their goals were to keep the gameplay realistic. So I know I just talked some smack on a realistic baseball game, but they wanted to keep the gameplay realistic, not just fully formulaic and boring, though. They wanted to add these whimsical elements that would make it fun for kids. So they wanted to keep it a simulation, but fun. So they didn't cut corners when it came to things like programming actual baseball elements into the game. But then they added power-ups, a variety of playing surfaces like grass, dirt, cement, and then silly elements and features of the maps or fields themselves that could alter the gameplay that happened. So they really took the time and the effort to make a good baseball game with these fun elements that just kind of took it to the next level for kids. The cast of Backyard Baseball consists of 30 kids that you could choose from to build your lineup to make your baseball team. And it's wild to me and so exciting to tell you all everything I learned about this. The cast had such diversity and inclusion in it that a lot of modern sports media in the world still can't compete with it. According to the Institute for Diversity and Ethics in Sports, Major League Baseball's population was 58% white in 1997 when Backyard Baseball was released. And even now, and more recent, I guess I can't call it now because the statistics from 2018, Major League Baseball is 59% white as of 2018. In Backyard Baseball, white players make up only 43.3% of the total players. 17 out of the 30 characters available to play as are people of color, which is so wild and excellent and wonderful in this game. And good for the devs. It's also wanted to note that half of the characters are girls. When they created these characters, the team started with fun little doodles that kind of kept up with this youthful appeal that they were bringing to the game. And this fun art style that was almost reminiscent of like a Peanuts comic strip. Simple shapes, silly little grins on these kids. It's really excellent and really fun to see. They worked hard to create kids of all heights, sizes, shapes, everything they could think of. They took inspiration from different characters across actual media as we know it, as well as some real-world examples and inspiration. For example, folks that were developing the game knew people when they grew up that excelled in sports, and they were also in a wheelchair. So that's why we can see some of these characters and some of this real life inspiration brought into Backyard Baseball. One of the devs, Richard Moe, stated the following about the game. Quote, "One of the things that we wanted to do was make a game that's approachable. There's a relatability that comes from saying, hey, that kid's like me, or hey, I know someone who's like that. I think especially for the kids market, we wanted to make a game that made them feel, quote, hey, we can play sports too." One of my favorite ways and one of the most groundbreaking ways that I think that this manifested itself in this game was in the skin tones available across the characters too. There's a spectrum of them. It's not just one or the other. The devs noted that in a lot of games, black characters had the exact same skin tone, which in the real world, not all folks are like that all the time. The amount of care put into the creation of these characters just can't be understated, which I think is awesome. Also, the announcer in the game is a black girl. Her name's Sunny Day, which I think is really cool. Sunny was also the debut voice acting gig for voice actress Jen Taylor, who later went on to voice Cortana in Halo and Princess Peach in Mario games. Absolutely wild. What a backstory, right? The characters' personalities came out in their mannerisms, how they approached the plate, how they walked, how they talked, as well as their theme songs, which are these fun little songs that the team at Humongous crafted to kind of match each player's vibe. So each player has their own theme song. So I want to play for you all one of these theme songs that I think is really fun and cool and might be very memorable to people that have played Backyard Baseball. So let's listen to it here. Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. They bring in the beat and the horns. Oh, my gosh. Amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So, if you're someone who's played this game quite a bit, you might recognize that theme song as the theme song belonging to the man, the young man, the myth, the legend, Pablo Sanchez, a playable character in this game. So when developing this character, the folks at Humongous drew back to the movie Bad News Bears, which is a baseball movie from 70s, 80s. It's an older one for sure. Nick Markovich explained, quote, "There's a character in there, and he was just a small Hispanic baseball player on the team, and they tended to not really put him in. And our thinking was, what if he was the best player on the team the whole entire time?" So they drew Pablo Sanchez like they imagined a kid that might be skipped when, you're picking your team in gym class. Short, he has a little goofy smile, little V-neck shirt. He's a very cute character with a big old head and a big goofy smile, and he's got his little belly peeking out from his shirt. He's goofy and doesn't necessarily look like this powerhouse character and player that he is in this game, which I think is excellent. For a lot of Backyard Baseball players, Pablo Sanchez being this little guy that had a chance and really could dominate really resonated with them. They thought, maybe if someone would just take a chance on me, I could show them that I'm pretty good too. I must say, though, the creation of this character definitely wasn't perfect and wasn't implemented 100% perfectly. Pablo was written as a character to communicate exclusively in Spanish. It says so on his little player card. Pablo does not speak any English, it seems. But when they did the voice acting call for this, no native Spanish speakers turned out to that casting call. So they went with someone that auditioned that had previously taken Spanish classes. They may have been fluent enough in Spanish that the folks doing the casting thought that they sounded legit enough to them, who were non-Spanish speaking. But a Colombian programmer who was working on the game heard Pablo's Spanish dialogue and let the team know, hey, yeah, this sounds exactly like a white dude trying to speak Spanish. But at that point, it was a little too late to recast. So they kind of worked differently in terms of the actual voice acting of this character. But a very interesting point when they were kind of making this game. Nevertheless, Pablo's legacy lives on, and he remained the favorite character of so many folks when they played this game. Even his backyard expanded into sports outside of baseball. The backyard franchise expanded into sports like soccer, football, basketball, and more. And Backyard actually made an official sequel to the game in partnership with the MLB, adding in MLB characters. That game's Backyard Baseball 2001. Pablo was still a strong player and remained the favorite of so many, even over the 31 pro players that were added into the game. Folks like Ken Griffey Jr., Derek Jeter, Randy Johnson, and Cal Ripken Jr., who was actually on Backyard Baseball 2001's cover. The legacy of Backyard Baseball lives on to this day. This deep dive is inspired, as mentioned, by folks on Twitter that requested it, that love this game, love the origin story, loved playing it, and they have such fond memories that it drew them to tell me about it and ask me to dig into it over 20 years later. The game also stays super relevant in pop culture and in the baseball world. In the 2017 MLB Players Weekend, players can customize their uniforms, they add their nicknames, they wear fun cleats. And in 2017, some of those teams took advantage of that whimsical weekend by digging into backyard baseball roots. The Oakland A's actually posted a tweet that showed their lineup of everybody's nicknames on the clipboards, like when you select your lineup in backyard baseball, which is really fun. I thought that was really cool. And, they're putting it out there into the world. Like, hey, remember this important piece of baseball pop culture and how fun that is for us? I must say, though, in a wild moment of absolute realness with you, my listener, I've never played backyard baseball. I've never done it. I've watched some gameplay. Folks have talked about it. I think I know, and we all know that Pablo Sanchez rules, but I've never played it. But I think I will play. Someday. Maybe soon. I'm actually doing a charity stream on Twitch in a little over a week, raising money for survivors.org. And something that can be unlocked via charity donations is a backyard baseball stream. So maybe my time has come. Maybe this is it. We'll find out. But either way, I cannot wait. A game that appeals to so many and brings up such fond memories for people is something I'm always excited to dig into, even if I don't have those memories quite yet. Granny said it best when Granny said, nostalgia is the most powerful graphics card. So while this game may not be the most beautiful baseball game I'll ever play, I think I'll have a really good time. And if you had a good time, I hope that this dive into more details about how it was created and where it came from taught you something about a game that you really cherish. So that is it for this week's episode of Today in Gaming Yesterday. I'd like to again thank RetroCDN.net for their GamePro scans, RetroMags.com for Nintendo Power scans, Foon on Twitter, TheRinger.com, WBUR.org, Fangraphs.com, and of course, the old reliable Wikipedia for all the information about the games covered, things I dug into, as well as our deep dive into backyard baseball. As mentioned, my name's Emma Pearl. You can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Emma Pearl here. You can follow me on Twitch, where I stream retro video games and show off my cute dog, twitch.tv/Emma Pearl. You can also follow the podcast, twitter.com/TIGYpod. Please rate, review, subscribe, all those good things for podcasts. If you like the podcast, please do them. And I will see you next time as we get into October 2000. The PS2 is coming out, baby. I'm so excited. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope you work hard, be nice, and have fun. Catch you next time.